You know, when most people think of public housing, they imagine dilapidated high-rises, broken elevators that constantly smell like pee, and gunshots ringing through the air. But as someone who's lived in a few, I can tell you there's a special kind of beauty in these concrete jungles. Sure, the plumbing rarely works. Junkies hang out in the stairwells, and you can hear rats scampering through the walls at night. But it builds character and community. Nothing brings people together like waiting in the blistering cold for the landlord who never shows up. So come along as I take you on a lovely tour of the most wonderfully wretched housing projects America has to offer. Just make sure to wear shoes you don't mind getting stabbed in. Let's start with a brief history of public housing projects in the United States. The government came up with the bright idea of public housing projects to solve the housing crisis during the Depression. Their plan was simple: provide affordable housing for the masses so we didn't end up begging on street corners. What could possibly go wrong? Turns out, a lot. The government built huge concrete towers, the projects, and shoved as many poor families as possible into tiny apartments with paper-thin walls. They stuffed people from all walks of life together in a cramped space and were somehow surprised when tensions rose. Before long, the projects descended into chaos. Gangs took over, crime was rampant, and no one felt safe. The middle-class families fled, leaving behind those with no choice. The government's grand plan to end slums created even worse slums, vertical ones. Some of the worst projects, like Chicago's Cabrini Green and Los Angeles' Jordan Downs, became notorious for violence. The police were frequently called but rarely showed up. If you valued your life, you avoided the projects at all costs. By the 1970s, most agreed public housing was an unmitigated disaster. The government tore down many projects, realizing warehousing poor people in high-rise slums was inhumane and counterproductive. Public housing in the U.S. has a long, troubled history. The government's goal to help the poor instead trapped families in a cycle of desperation and danger for decades. Their solution created one of America's worst social policy failures and a cautionary tale of the law of unintended consequences. Now let's get into the top 5 worst housing projects in America. The powers that be thought cramming poor folks into massive concrete blocks was a swell idea. As if poverty wasn't hard enough, now you get to share walls with criminals and live in fear of stray bullets. Lovely. Cabrini Green, Chicago. This project was more like a mini-city, with over 3,000 units in Midtown Chicago. Gangs, drugs, and violence were rampant. At its peak, Cabrini Green averaged about 6 homicides per year. Charming. They finally tore most of it down, but not before it starred in some classic 80s movies as the epitome of urban blight, Pruitt-Igoe, St. Louis. With nearly 3,000 units, Pruitt-Igoe was doomed from the start. Shoddy construction and cheap materials meant the place started falling apart almost immediately. The projects descended into lawlessness, with crime rates through the roof. After just 2 decades, the city demolished the whole mess. Robert Taylor Homes, Chicago. At its peak, Robert Taylor Homes was the largest public housing project in the U.S., with over 4,000 units. Like Cabrini Green, it was notorious for gangs, guns, and murders. Parts were demolished, starting in the 90s, the last buildings coming down in 2006. Good riddance. Queensbridge Houses, New York City, the largest public housing development in North America, with over 3,000 units in Queens, New York City. While not quite as dangerous as Chicago's infamous projects, Queensbridge nonetheless struggles with poverty, crime, neglect, and urban decay. But hey, at least it's still around, for now anyway. Jordan Downs, Los Angeles. Originally built as temporary housing in the Watts neighborhood of LA, Jordan Downs descended into gang violence and crime in the 80s and 90s. Although not as huge as the Chicago or St. Louis projects, it's still notorious as one of the most dangerous housing developments in the U.S. But don't worry, only a few murders a year. What could possibly go wrong? So what went wrong? Here are the issues plaguing these housing projects. Living in the projects is no picnic. Believe me, I've seen it all in my brief stint as a resident of the Cabrini Green projects in Chicago. The powers that be had lofty goals of providing affordable housing for the downtrodden masses, but their good intentions paved the road to hell, or at least the ninth circle of urban decay. A few minor oversights in the planning stages doomed these concrete jungles to become dens of iniquity. For one, cramming large numbers of impoverished and often desperate people into cramped, subpar housing is a recipe for conflict. Tempers flare, violence erupts, and criminal elements move in to take advantage of the chaos. Before you know it, you've got warring gangs battling for control of their turf and innocent families caught in the crossfire. Moreover, the neglect and apathy of those in charge allowed these projects to descend into squalor. Shoddy construction and lack of proper maintenance caused apartments to quickly deteriorate into slums. Plumbing issues, pest infestations, and broken fixtures were the norm. The powers that be didn't seem to care, as long as the rent checks kept coming in. Out of sight, out of mind. Finally, the concentration of poverty in these massive housing blocks only served to perpetuate the cycle of disadvantage. Kids grew up surrounded by crime, drugs, and lack of opportunity, so they often fell into that life themselves. There were no role models or motivation to aim higher. The projects became inescapable black holes that swallowed up ambition and hope. In the end, the government's plan to remedy urban ills by building affordable housing backfired stupendously. Rather than lift people out of hardship, the projects only entrenched poverty and exacerbated societal problems. The road to hell is indeed paved with good intentions. My advice: avoid the projects at all costs, unless you're looking to star in the next hit crime drama. Here are the efforts to improve and revitalize struggling housing projects. Call me an optimist, but I like to think even the sorriest situations have a silver lining. Take the housing projects, please take them. Kidding aside, there have been valiant efforts to turn some of these urban hellscapes around. After Katrina washed away the Magnolia projects in New Orleans, the city had a chance to start fresh. In came mixed-income housing, fewer high-rises, and more low-rise apartments and townhomes. They sprinkled in amenities like a community center, daycare, and healthcare clinic. The redeveloped new Magnolia is a far cry from its crime-ridden predecessor. Over in Jordan Downs, LA, a $1 billion makeover is underway. They're tearing down dilapidated barracks and putting up eco-friendly townhomes and apartments, a revamped park, grocery store, and community center. The city hopes attracting higher-income residents will help subsidize housing for lower-income families. A lofty goal, but any improvement is welcome in an area once called the most dangerous place in Los Angeles. In Chicago, the infamous Cabrini Green homes were demolished and replaced with a mixed-income development. Only a small percentage of public housing remains. While gentrification is controversial, many see the area's drop in crime and poverty as a win. The high-rises may be gone, but so are the open-air drug markets. Look, I get it. Revitalization and urban renewal are loaded terms that often mean low-income residents get the boot. But when housing projects descend into lawlessness and squalor, something's gotta give. Tearing them down and starting over, diversifying income levels, and making the area safe and livable again seems the only humane option. If done right, with genuine care for residents, these efforts can turn around even the most notorious slums of despair. But we've got a long way to go. What is the future of public housing projects, and where do we go from here? So after decades of failed social experiments gone awry, where do we go with public housing now? As a kid who grew up in the shadow of the infamous Cabrini Green projects in Chicago, I have a few ideas. Tear them down, raze those concrete monstrosities to the ground, and start over. We now know that warehousing the poor in massive high-rises was about the worst idea anyone has ever had, ever. Instead, build smaller low-rise apartments, townhomes, and single-family homes integrated into the wider community. Give people their dignity and a sense of ownership back. Fix the systemic issues. It's not enough to just build nicer buildings. We need to address the root causes that lead to poverty and lack of opportunity in the first place. Improve schools, increase access to job training programs, raise the minimum wage, reform unfair housing policies. People in public housing aren't there because they're lazy or inferior. They're there due to circumstances beyond their control. Increase security. For current residents stuck living in the projects, their top concern is safety. Increase police patrols, install better lighting, repair broken windows and doors, and evict criminal tenants. No one should have to raise their children in a place where they fear for their lives every time they walk out the front door. In the end, there are no easy answers or quick fixes. But with smarter policies, sustainable funding, and a lot more compassion, we can work to dismantle the worst of these slums of despair and provide affordable housing that also allows people to live with dignity. The failed social experiments of the past should remain there, in the past. It's time to build a new future. Well, that concludes our whirlwind tour of misery and squalor. I don't know about you, but after seeing the crumbling infrastructure, boarded-up windows, and broken dreams in these housing projects, I'm ready to move to the suburbs. Sure, I may have to deal with nosy neighbors and noisy lawnmowers, but at least I won't be dodging bullets or stepping over used needles. The silver lining is that many of these complexes are being torn down and replaced with something a little less dystopian. But, until then, remember to lock your doors and say your prayers if you ever find yourself spending a night in the projects. Now, if you will excuse me, I have some real estate listings to browse.